Hi, I'm Cec Busby. Welcome to First Act, the podcast series brought to you by Cec Business Builders, where we chat to inspiring innovators across the startup and small business ecosystem. If you're looking for small business inspiration, you can find us at www.cocesbusinessbuilders.com.au or join us on Facebook. Hi everybody, Cec Busby here, and today I'm chatting with Tyson Koh. Tyson is the man behind the Keep Sydney Open movement. He's the former programmer of ABC's ever-popular music show Rage. He's an occasional DJ and a consultant on the city's nightlife. He's also one of the honorees on our inaugural Cec Business Builders Power List. Welcome. Tyson, everyone probably is very familiar with you given the recent election bid by Keep Sydney Open. But I wouldn't mind going a step back, getting back into those origin stories. We all know the lockouts were the inspiration, but for you, what made you want to get into this movement of reactivating the city's nighttime culture?
Yeah, well, it's kind of funny. I mean, why was this the issue that shook me out of my daily life and decided to become an activist? And it's kind of funny. I do question that myself sometimes, and I think it's because I realised how far-reaching the impact of the lockout laws would be, and it wasn't just something that affected being able to go out, but also a city's sense of self-worth. People's ability to connect, make new friendships, be inspired, the cultural impact, the impact on jobs and small businesses. And also, I think when we're talking about the nighttime space, we're talking about a sense of belonging for so many people, where potentially they're able to be inspired to do great things. I mean, I certainly know that I get a lot of inspiration sometimes late at night and meet new people and have great conversations where, you know, being able to connect with people in a limited amount of time after you finish work and then all of a sudden, okay, that's it, time to go home. It's just not enough. It's not how a major city operates. So I wanted to do something about that. And also I saw, particularly my background being involved in the music industry. I was the producer of Rage for over 7 years. I could see how the music industry was being really adversely affected, and how a lot of jobs in the sector, a lot of confidence in the sector was really affected. So I decided to start Keep Sydney Open. And also the other thing is I just saw that no one else was doing anything about it too. Yeah. So there was that element of stepping up when not many other people had.
Yeah. And let's talk a bit more about your music producing. Obviously, there was that double blow for musos. There was the pokies, which kind of wiped everything out, like in the 90s and stuff. And now, just as the industry was getting back on its feet again, and there was a really kind of solid sort of entertainment scene happening again, and it kind of clawed its way back up. And then the lockouts come along and they destroy all these precincts that are essential. How for you, someone who's actually in that industry, how far-reaching was the impact?
Well, it was massive, you know, and that's not just anecdotal. It's a matter of evidence. We've got the federally funded Live Music Office, which found that ticket revenue sales for the live music sector had been almost halved in 2 years after the lockout laws. And you're right. I mean, you know, a lot of people who are involved in the live music scene have long memories. Remember a time when Sydney was a real hotbed of music, you know, in the 70s and 80s. And you're right. The pokies really transformed live music spaces, where a lot of the VIP lounges and pokey dens that we take as being a given and part of Sydney's identity now used to be live music rooms and band rooms. And then, of course, the lockout laws, we saw a trend away from live music and bands towards electronic music, and then that started to change again. And I think now there's actually a really nice balance between the two. But just as the live music scene was starting to pick up a little bit, yeah, the lockout laws came into effect, and venues shut down, less places to go, and unfortunately, yeah, it's something that's going to take a little while to recover from.
Mm. And let's talk a bit about that gentrification that's kind of happened because of this as well. You know, areas that like the Cross and Darlinghurst that were traditionally the place where, you know, bohemians, for want of a better word, were gathered. Now, giant high rises being built, apartments, like the whole nature of the city has changed.
Well, that's right. It really has. I think the chemistry of Sydney has changed, not necessarily for the better. There's still some wonderful things going on. But, I think if we're talking about cities in a global context, I mean, we can't fool ourselves here. Gentrification is a global trend. And we see that trend in cities around the world where it's usually artists and creatives that make an area desirable. And then all of a sudden the real estate agents and the property developers move in, and then they price out the people that made it attractive in the first place. And then the artists and creatives get spread out. And so, yeah, look, it's not just Sydney, but the lockout laws, without a shadow of a doubt, have accelerated that whole process in a way in which I feel like Sydney doesn't have that creative and artistic identity anymore. And what we've been seeing is that a lot of people who are movers and shakers in the creative world have just had jack of it, and they've moved away from Sydney. Either they've moved to Melbourne, or they've moved to New York, or Berlin, London, and I think it is a real loss for the city to have this creative brain drain. And as a result, what happens? And I'm thinking about the small business and startup sector. Exciting cities and ones that really offer that whole 360 experience that Sydney has the potential to again, which is, we have great weather, we've got the beaches, we've got that real active lifestyle, but, where is our sense of pride in our theatres and our live music venues and, all those things that make a city complete? And so what do you get as a result of not nurturing our creative sector is you end up pushing away the people who are inspired by creativity in the arts, and attracting people who perhaps aren't so inspired. And when we're talking about, I think, business innovation, we're talking about more than just hard workers. We're talking about more than just having an economics or a finance degree. We're talking about people who get their ideas from all sorts of different places, whether that be not just the business world, but also from nature or from literature and from music. And I think it's those cities that inspire people in a multitude of ways that have an edge over other cities. And that's what I really want to see for Sydney.
It's interesting when you mention that as well, because you think about the government's push for innovation, and then the flip side of that, people's fear that, the AI and the robots are going to take over. But so what people need are those soft skills, those creative skills, and yet there's not the support in that area from the government. So how do you think, just as individuals, we can help nurture this?
Yeah, well, look, that's actually a really interesting question, and not for a second am I going to sit here and say that I've got all the answers, but, I do think that there's a double whammy here in Sydney and with the New South Wales government, where not only is there very little active support in the same way that we've seen, say, for example, in Victoria, where I think they've just announced a $250 million fund for small businesses, but also the regulatory climate in New South Wales is so restrictive that it doesn't allow various sectors to build themselves up. And so I think, we need to demand more out of our policymakers. And I definitely think that, certainly, I guess, when we're talking about the business and creative sectors, we are very resilient, really. And even though we're not being nurtured. I mean, I'm thinking about the punk scene, which has been around since the 70s, and there is still gigs going on in, warehouses and backyards. And, there's always people who will find a way, regardless of what the climate is. But I just feel like we're not really reaching our potential. And so I think what can we do? Look, I think that Sydney's the kind of place where you need to do just that little bit more than go about your day to day and go about your business, whether that be as an entrepreneur or whether that be as a creative, and set aside a little bit of time for activism in some way, and whether that's for your industry or whether that's for some other kind of cause. I think it's important to step outside of yourself and contribute to that public conversation and potentially to policy making as well.
Yeah. So you're kind of a bit of a reluctant activist. It was what happened with the lockout laws that pushed you into moving for change. But did that kind of civil unrest play any kind of part in your life growing up? Did your parents, were they like keen activists or?
You know what? They weren't. They weren't. But what my parents were individuals and very unique people with a unique story. They both came to Australia essentially escaping various geopolitical situations. My dad coming from Indonesia, but then as an ethnic Chinese person, and Chinese people were targeted and victimized by local Indonesians, and particularly if they were successful with their businesses. So my father came here during the White Australia policy and stuck it out. My mother left because of the Islamic Revolution in Iran, and they ended up working in the fashion industry, and they were running small businesses from the time that I was born right up until just recently. And so I think that story of, coming to Australia and finding your own way through, independence and hard work, I think does inspire me. And I think also, maybe not so much my family background, but I think just always being involved in the creative sectors, whether that be in the music or visual arts scenes in Sydney, I think has really inspired me. There's a lot of people who are very progressive in their thinking. There are a lot of activists in those scenes. And I think I've just always been the person who, if I don't like something, I don't like to just complain about it. I do like to do something about it, even if it's just a way to channel my own frustrations.
Yeah.
And, I think there's no textbook for being an activist. And, in the same way that I don't think there's really a textbook for being an innovator in the business sector. I think it's something that you find out through trial and error, from having mentors and speaking to people and just giving it a go. And certainly, since the lockout laws, and as I say, the issue is so much more than just nightlife and the laws themselves. And so, I've been really, I guess, awakened in a way to all these other issues that are going on in our city, and how we interact as Sydneysiders with each other and how we can improve those relationships.
Did you think when you started Keep Sydney Open, that 5 years on, that the battle would still be going? Like, I imagine, like what I thought myself, it'll be like Melbourne, it'll be a trial, people will go, it's awful, and then the government will give way.
That's right.
But here we are.
Did I think they would still be around after half a decade? Absolutely not. In fact, taking Melbourne as an example, I think they introduced the lockout laws and they protested, and within 3 months they were gone. And that's what I thought was going to happen here. So I thought all I had to do was start a group, organise a rally, have it gain some traction, and it was one of the biggest single issue rallies ever in Sydney, with 15,000 people. But they're still here, and so with that, we've had to find different ways of lobbying, different ways of activating various communities. We have started a political party now, which is, to my mind, one of the first political parties started by millennials, really, in the country. So we only embarked on that because the government wasn't listening. So we kept thinking, okay, well, they're not listening to the rally, they're not listening to the petitions, they're not listening to meetings in their offices. So what do we do? And yeah, we're a political party now. We are still fighting. There are signs of the lockout laws being potentially wound back, as a committee has just been announced by the state government. And in the meantime, yeah, I mean, like, we got over 80,000 votes in our first election, and we'd only been a political party for 1 year, which was amazing. And so, it's well and truly a movement now. For some people, it's just about the lockout laws, but for other people, it is more than just that. It's about looking at politics in a different way and going, well, why should we leave it up to the red and blue teams to battle it for, the lesser of evils, and surely there's some other kind of way to go about politics, and I think that is what we represent, and Keep Sydney Open. We're not a small business; we're a political party, but like a disruptive entity in the business sector, I think that's what Keep Sydney Open could potentially represent in politics.
So for you, it's definitely not a single issue party. You've got your eye on a lot of areas that you think Keep Sydney Open can help.
Yeah, I think so. And it's a case of taking it one step at a time because, as I say, the laws represent so much more. And so, yeah, when I think about the lockout laws and their impact, we're talking about small business. I mean, so many businesses have closed down, not just venues, but we're talking about convenience stores. I think Sydney must be the only city where convenience stores actually closed down, as opposed to, multiply like they do elsewhere. And so, we are talking about jobs, and we are talking about the arts sector, and we're talking about public transport, that we want to support an active and rich nighttime economy, talking about law enforcement, public health and safety, and all of these things. So, at first glance, it's a narrow issue, but we found out that it's not. And then beyond that, we realised that the kinds of people that wanted to see movement on the lockout laws were so diverse. It's not just people who are artists and creatives. There's people of all stripes love a night out and love having a city that is vibrant, not just during the daytime, but at nighttime too. So, we see ourselves as unifying people of different stripes. And to do that, we have a look at how do we engage with people in terms of political discourse. And we're seeing at the moment that a lot of the messages, particularly on the progressive side of politics, just aren't resonating with people. So, how do we change the nature of that conversation? How do we respect everybody's backgrounds and different views? We're still working it out, and we're evolving. And the exciting thing about being a young political party is that anyone can really join and get involved and help us evolve, I think. So, yeah, it is more than a single issue party.
And you've also been consulting with City of Sydney, yeah?
Yeah, we have, and there's been a few changes on that front too, in terms of local government policy and trying to support and allow for more activity at night time. Definitely, they've been doing a great job.
Yeah. What do you think is the other, for us, we hear a lot from businesses about red tape, the endless red tape that they have to go through to get just the smallest change, put some chairs on the sidewalk or whatever. So what other issues do you think the small business owners are facing?
Yeah, well, look, any business is reliant on a customer base and clients. And so if we're talking about a bricks and mortar business, we're talking about foot traffic. Obviously a lot of business heads online, and there's a lot of people that know about a particular business and will travel to it as a destination, but also so much of a business, particularly in inner city precincts are reliant on foot traffic. We've seen so many businesses go under. I mean, in the case of Sydney, we've got the light rail, which is just torn the city to shreds, and I think it will pay off eventually, but it'll take almost 5-10 years to pay dividends. So we can't allow the city to be a locals only precinct, and I think people have to be enticed by the city in order for small businesses to gain an audience. And I think also when we're talking about innovation within that sector as well, as I say, keep Sydney open. No, we're not a business or even traditionally seen as being involved in that sector, but how we see ourselves is creating a set of conditions within a city that encourages a free exchange of ideas, that inspires people, a city that inspires people to come up with new ideas. And I'm thinking about the other people who are included on the power list, and there's some amazing stories out there, whether that be, for example, Kia Dow from Indigenous Businesses Australia, and
Guzman and his catalyzer, that's the migrant entrepreneur program.
Absolutely. Yeah. And, new organisations like Verve Super, inspiring women to make super funds for women. I think all that stuff is great. How do people come up with these ideas, and how do people gain a sense of social responsibility and get the confidence to be able to innovate? That's what we want to see for Sydney, and we want to create those conditions. So for us, it's a little bit meta, yeah, sure. But you're absolutely right. Beyond that, and given that we were aspiring to get into Parliament, then yeah, absolutely. Red tape, those hurdles and roadblocks that for some reason our state government just loves putting up. We need to remove that and allow for bottom-up innovation in both the business and also the art sector.
Yeah. What about mentors? Have you had any mentors in your life? Because it seems to me nearly everyone that I chat with who's gone at all far with their career has had some people that have either inspired them or helped guide them along the way. Is there anyone for you that stands out?
Yeah, I guess there's there are a handful of people. I mean, and it depends because I've worn a few different hats.
Yeah.
In my time, and
I guess a better question is how important are mentors to someone's success story?
Well, look, I think really important, because I think there's a tendency for a lot of people, when you are trying to push the boat out, it can be a bit lonely sometimes, and you can feel like you're facing the battles that you're facing alone. It's really easy to feel like your problems are unique, but when you have mentors, and I have had mentors, in the television industry, in the music industry, and also in politics, it's just really important to hear that someone has been down that path before, and that you will face certain issues, certain criticisms, that it will be difficult, and potentially how to navigate around those issues. I think, it's really important. And I think sometimes those mentors might even have real nuggets in terms of, okay, well, this is what you do. And then, I mean, like, for example, with the political party, I spoke to someone in particular who comes from the finance sector, who is who's quite adept at fundraising, for example, and just, little things there that I just would have never thought of, in terms of approaching people and trying to bring them on board to potentially support whatever it is that you're doing, things like that, I think are really important.
Navigate a grant application.
Oh, yeah, exactly. Yeah, there really is a bit of a science to it. So.
So what's next for you, given sadly you didn't get the seat that you wanted?
Yeah.
How active is Keep Sydney Open going to be in the next year, 2 years, until we get what we want?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, look, basically, I mean, like, it's been a real labour of love, I mean, I haven't gotten paid for this, and neither has anyone else on the team. It's been a matter of doing it because we believe in it, and we're committed to seeing this issue through, come hell or high water. So we will definitely be there, and we are currently. There is a review into the lockout laws that's currently underway. Submissions are being sought by the government. So I would encourage anyone out there, either as a business or as an individual, to contribute a submission to the review. And I think it will be decided come September this year. So we're a part of that process. Also, even though we didn't get a seat in the election, but we were the best, or one of the best performing new parties, debut parties, I think, in political history. And so we really want to develop that. And a lot of people still don't know that Keep Sydney Open is a political party. So being in our first election, and when the coverage was on television, it was on the ABC, and Anthony Green, probably mentioned our name 200 times throughout the course of the night. So people know who we are now, and in many ways, I think we have more support than ever. So we feel a sense of responsibility to the people who voted for us and to the people who may potentially vote for us at any subsequent elections. And we really want to develop what our identity is and the ways in which we go about change making in New South Wales. So yeah, there's so much work to do, we're absolutely committed because
in it for the long haul.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we love Sydney. That's at the heart of all of this, and a lot of people talk it down, and it's really easy to compare it to other cities and feel like there's something lacking. But there's so many inspired and hardworking people here, and we just want Sydney to reach its full potential.
And in terms of the election, was that a steep learning curve?
Oh, wasn't it ever? Yeah, absolutely. I mean, politics is difficult. Really, really difficult. And I think we were kind of naive in a way in which we kind of don't really see ourselves as being in politics. We still see ourselves as being a grassroots campaign, which we still are. But at times it got really messy, and the criticism and the misrepresentation and, people just fabricating things and those things spreading because of, the ease of spreading misinformation on social media. But then on the flip side, there was also that, I guess that real heartening sense that we were making an impact, and we had people from all areas of New South Wales. We ran in 42 seats, and people in inner city Sydney, and we had people right up in Ballina and right to the Victorian border in Albury and Murray. Something about our campaign struck a chord, and people said, I want to stand up for Keep Sydney Open in my local area. And it was just amazing to get that support, get the amount of votes that we did. And so I guess in terms of what we've learned, I think we've learned that there are a lot of people out there that want to be active and that want to put their money where their mouths are and stand up for something as well. We need to navigate all that messy stuff, and I think we'll continue to do the best we can. But also I think that we learned that there is a space for a new approach to politics as well. We polled 9%, in some seats, which is huge, and
especially for a brand new party. That's incredible.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, so I think we learnt that to some extent. Even though yes, some things are formulaic, and there's a reason why. There's a reason why something is a rule in politics, but I think we also learned that you can forge something a little bit different and unique, and to trust our instincts when it felt right. I think so. Yeah. Well,
there's a very big crossbench now, and so a lot of independents have come through. Seems like grassroots politics is making a comeback, and people are really fighting for issues that they believe in. So when we win Keep Sydney Open and the lockout laws are gone, what are you going to be fighting for next?
Yeah, well, as I say, look, for me, in terms of lockout laws and the nighttime economy and that space, I think about venues, I think about the streetscape, I think about the dance floor, and it's a great equalizer. I mean, all the people that I've met in the last 20 years of going out, everybody from doctors to tradies to, heirs to multi-million dollar fortunes to poor people and, people who are still figuring it out and unemployed people. And, you can find something in common with all of these wonderful people that you meet on a night out. And so to me, there is that sense of social cohesion. And if we're using that as, I guess, the motivator for wanting to get rid of the lockout laws, then yeah, there's a shit ton of work to be done. And, in terms of, I think what we're seeing now, the trend is, I think, for a lot of people all over the world to be let down by their governments. And so people have to take charge. And I don't necessarily mean in a real rabble-rousing way, but I mean, if the government isn't setting up, a particular kind of fund for an area of the arts or an accelerator program or a mentorship program, then do it yourself, and we're seeing where, governments are falling short when it comes to, let's say, sustainability initiatives. We're seeing a lot of entities in the private sector really take up the mantle and embed that within their mission. So, I think that's what we want to see more of, and we want to still be advocates in our own way. And yeah, it's not just about nightlife for us; it's about creating, really, I think, rich and harmonious society. And so that definitely doesn't begin or end with the lockout laws. So
Yeah.
I think I can't let you go without talking about Rage, though.
Okay.
7 years. It's got to be like an Australian institution. Like everybody I know would turn on Rage. How was it for you programming that show?
Look, it was amazing. I mean, it's a dream job, and I love music, and I still have a weekly radio show. I volunteer at FBI community radio station in Sydney, and look, I just love music, and that opportunity to be able to engage with artists that you admire, for over an hour and spend time with them and talk about their favorite music is amazing. And my tenure saw through the 25th and the 30th anniversaries of Rage, and the fact that it's still there, I think, is testament to how embedded it is in Australian pop music culture. And it was amazing. I mean, everybody from interviewing, Midnight Oil to Nena Cherry to Marilyn Manson to Giorgio Moroder and just, all these legends. And also to be able to put interesting content in front of people as well. I'm a real nut for obscure content and it might be a band that you love, like let's say, I don't know, Mental as Anything or whatever. And you hear the one or two songs on the radio all the time, but what about, about the other forgotten singles and videos that they came up with and just digging for that stuff? I mean, it was a real dream. And as far as being a music programmer is concerned, I think it was the best job in the country. And I can't believe I did that. It's amazing.
Any regrets? Would you want to return?
Well, look, I mean, I think one thing that threads a lot of the people on the power list together that, you've got to keep moving forward. And I think it's really important either for an organisation or for an individual, I think, to keep moving forward and to keep evolving. So whilst I love that job, yeah, I could probably do that for the rest of my life. But I think, I've done that now, and it is searching for a new frontier and a different way to make a difference. So, I was happy to vacate the seat for someone else who's going to bring fresh ideas to that role. And, me using my experience both in that job and from outside of it to do something new as well. So, yeah, I'm excited. I'm excited for what the future holds, for sure.
Do you DJ still?
Yeah, I do. Yeah, it's fun. Not as often as I'd like to, but it's always fun to be able to engage with with people on that level, because seeing people just kind of forget themselves on a dance floor, and people smiling at strangers, and the way that they interact with each other on a night out when it's at its best, I think is just sheer joy. So yeah, love DJing, and would love to see more spaces where you can DJ in this city.
Cool. Thank you, Tyson. It was lovely talking to you.
Yeah, likewise.
Yes, thank you.
And that's it for First Act. Don't forget, if you're looking for small business inspiration or advice, head to koshesbusinessbuilders.com.au.